Hey everybody, I can't get it to work on my laptop, so here I am on my phone. All right, let's get started today. Hopefully you guys are on and can hear me. I am Ingrid, and I'm doing the week 3 of the 7-week summer Peace of Mind challenge. And last week we talked about squads. So hopefully everybody had a little bit of fun with their squads and figuring out, just even in their head, people who they can bring onto their team. And again, remember, this is not something you have to act on right away, because sometimes feeling like you have to act on it right away stops you from doing it in the first place. So just relax and dream a little bit, write it down, think about things you would like your child, the person you're caregiving for, to be able to do during the day, and just start dreaming it up and writing it down and brainstorming those things, and then start adding people to it, and just get through that stressful part of the actual making it happen, because sometimes that stops us in our tracks. So week 1, we talked about person-centered approach. So the first 2 tabs of the caregiver document really focus on, especially that second tab, pictures, narration. Who is this person? That part's super important. Those are sometimes the hardest things to get through writing down, because it's emotional. But it's really important that people know some past little stories and some milestones and some adventures shared, so that these people that you do bring into your squad just have a little bit of knowledge, which is always good. Good morning, Vanessa. Thanks for writing in. It was very funny. I don't know if all you saw in the post, right after I got off the call last week, the live, Facebook posted an ad for a company selling a box of motivational cards, and they were the Unstuck box. And I thought that was kind of great. Facebook algorithm working hard there. That is, I mean, you get stuck, and trying to get unstuck and moving forward with this is tough sometimes. But the motivational card that they put up as an example was to talk to people, because it's lonely. Get out, make a phone call, talk to friends, talk to people. And that was a good motivational tip. So I thought that was pretty funny that Facebook shared that. So here in week 3, we've got a big thing here in the middle of the 7-week challenge to tackle. And I'm going to talk about the 4th and 5th tabs today, the schedule and caregiver, the medical care instructions stuff. This isn't quite as fun, but we're going to make it fun. Let's again, we'll dream a little bit, and really try to think about it in different ways and break it down. One of the things I wanted to loop back to from last week, because I know a lot of people mentioned trust as being a really big barrier. And as I mentioned last week, I respect that every single one of us has our own fears, our own experiences, our own situations. Trust is a big one. So you're all going to have to find that journey for yourselves, based on what you've got at your disposal and what you've had to deal with in the past. But one thing I like to do when there is a big word, a big emotion like trust, is to try to break it down a little bit. So that's what I want to start today, is to break down this trust piece into some categories, because trust is just too big of a word on its own. What are your trust issues? Because I feel like there's several layers, and you might even have more that you can come up with. Um, do you just don't trust that the person you would like to ask to help is good enough with details, that they would just mess up and not really be able to do all those little things? That's one piece. Do you don't trust them because you just think they don't even care? Like they wouldn't even care that you had a list, that you had a way to do things, that there were important things. Do you just think they wouldn't care? Or even to a more extreme level, do you feel like they would purposely harm your child? Because that's a whole nother level of things. So if you can break down into those three categories, maybe you can come up with some other categories, but chisel away at the trust piece. Because maybe not everyone is in the category of they would harm your child on purpose. That's obviously the big one we need to avoid. So in taking that trust piece and breaking it down, then we can take the things we're going to try to ask people to help with and break those things down to sort of fall into those categories. For instance, if you don't think they would pay attention to detail, and this is, in the present, if you can bring someone in to maybe help with feeding. So for the first couple of times, they could just watch you make the food and be there with you while you feed. And then if you started to feel some trust, you'll know if they're asking questions, if they're jotting things down, if they really seem to be paying attention, or are they just on their phone and staring out the window? I mean, you're just going to know whether you can move to that second level, which is, hey, how about I'll make the food, but I'll let you feed my child. Or another level, I'll watch you make the food and I'll watch you feed them. So you can slowly move through the phases so that you don't feel like you're going from, here, it's on paper, I'm leaving, I'm going to trust you to do this. You really have to break it down. And you'll just know if after the first time you don't think they're one of the people that will follow or is interested in those details, they're not the person for the job. So you need to kind of think about that. You can also get people involved in the tasks that aren't those, medicine, food, physical safety, those are your key trust issues. But there are other pieces that you can ask for help in your present day world or in the future when you're setting up this wonderful support system for whoever is going to be caring for your child. Someone just to go with you to doctor's appointments. Someone to go with you in the grocery store and maybe push them in their chair, or they push the cart while you push your child. Things like helping you food prep. If you do 2 or 3 weeks of food and freeze it ahead of time. There are different ways. So start thinking about the tasks and how much involvement they need with your child and how close they get to those 3 pillars of food, medicine, physical safety. Like those might be the hardest, but think there's other places to get support outside of those things. So breaking it down is key, and that's the kind of mindset you're going to have before you're starting in on these big next 2 tasks, which is your schedule and your care and medical. Because if you just have it all in a big jumble in your head, it's going to be really, really hard to write it down. But if you can simplify and declutter everything before you start to write it down, it becomes a lot easier. So I put the schedule first because that's a great way to start to declutter and simplify. Just I just walked around with a notepad with myself for a week, jotting things down. And remember, this can be a dream too. Okay, like don't think that because you wrote it down is something that you're doing or need to do. We all have our dream schedule. Most of the time, my schedule goes haywire with Sarah. We fit into sort of a loose schedule, but it is certainly not on the hour, and it is certainly not the same every day. But it doesn't mean that we can't write something down as a framework to give someone else a starting point. And when you start looking at that, you say, hey, like, wow, I could make improvements here. And it does trickle into the present day, which is really cool. But just to give you that sense of, I would love to make sure she gets 3 whole glasses of juice a day, and they should be 30 minutes before she starts to eat to prep her stomach. Sometimes I forget and I push things back, but write it down. Bathing. I don't get as many baths and maybe as I would like, but write the ones down that you would. Write down your dream schedule for your child. It's not meant to make you feel guilty that you're not doing this stuff. You're doing great. And what you're doing is working for you and everything. It's meant to just have a really good framework for someone. And it's actually, at least for me personally, I love to know that people are doing things with her that I am not able to do, because it's great, and Sarah needs that in her life. So a couple of examples of what you should do in this prep phase before you start to write the schedule is a little bit from our first couple of weeks. I talked about decluttering information, decluttering your process. That just makes things easier to write down. I think the first week we talked about each time you go through something at your house, if I had to write this down, how complicated would that be? So think about that. One thing that I share is that my husband will get my daughter dressed and I'll say, why did you put those pants on her? Those are too big for her. And he'd say, well, if they're too big for her, why are they in the closet? And I would go, oh, yeah, you're right. Like I just know intrinsically, like I look in her closet, I know what fits, I know what doesn't fit, I know what has a stain, I know what's for school, I know what's not for school. Nobody else is going to know that. So what I did is I just got some bins and I put those categories of things up on the shelf, because Sarah was going through a period where she was gaining weight and losing weight a lot. So I saved clothes that were either a little too big or a little too small, so that she always had something for what size she was at the time. Luckily, we're out of that phase. And then I separated out sort of like home clothes, which were just her hangout clothes, from her school clothes. But I can't expect someone else to memorize all that and know all that. You could even put labels and things if you wanted to go that far, if you had some really important special pieces. But again, it's not in that feeding, medicine, or physical safety piece. So this is not super important, but it's a thing. So if you can get some of those things straightened out and simplified in your head before you start, it makes the list going a little bit easier. So this schedule, I just put in the template, I think by half hour, fill it out as you need, very loose. Go back, you'll have reiterations of it. You'll input things and say, I'd really like for her to get a hand massage and stretch out her fingers at this time. Let's stick that in there. Again, not meaning that you have to do it. This is not to add more work to you, but it's to stretch a little bit and dream a little bit. And because remember, these caregivers don't have the full load that you do. They're not doing all the other stuff. So they have time to do these extra little things that you maybe don't have time to do, or the energy to do, or the mental space to do, whatever it is. You can do these little stretch things and these little extra things because these caregivers do have that time because they're not trying to do everything like you are. So a little tip I thought about, I have not tried this myself, so I would love for somebody out there to try it and tell me how it goes. I think because we do so much, a lot of people don't even know what we do. So I learned that if you set up, so I do have an email for Sarah so that she has her own Gmail account. So that when I set up different things on apps, I set it up through her email so that it shares from there and she builds her team based on her account. And whether that's sharing this caregiver document or I sign up for some people use seizure apps. If they have a share feature, then it's a good way to share it from their account. And I found out that you can share notification schedules. So if you go onto your phone through an Android, and iPhone has this too. I think Android more uses the Google system to do the sharing, and iPhone has a feature. But you create like a family, but these don't have to be family members. They could be caregivers, friends as well. And you can actually share the notifications with them. So you don't have to share it permanently, but maybe your spouse or a sister or an aunt, someone who you think is going to play a big role maybe in helping you, they need an appreciation of all that you are doing so that when you do say, hey, I'm looking for help or I'm bringing some more people in, everybody understands. But so that might be a fun way to really load up that schedule and the notifications, because it might be fun for that person to see a copy of those for a couple days and see them just popping up on their phone. Oh, now they're doing this, now they're doing this, now they're feeding, now they're prepping, now they're bathing, now they're going for a walk, now they're stretching, now they're swimming, now they're at therapy, whatever that may be. Just to sort of make a full circle awareness. And again, this whole process of getting things out of your head and getting it down is helpful. So that next tab, so I printed this out so I could look at it since my laptop wasn't working. But this is sort of, as far as the physical safety, health piece of it, this is the core piece of this, is your care and medical page. So I put it in a head to toe approach. That's just the way I like to think about things in sort of order so that I don't forget something. So I organized it like this, all the way, just basically starting with the hair and moving on down to the feet. So this is my big homework piece for you, your big challenge piece for you in week 3 is maybe even before you dive into that schedule. The schedule is sort of an ongoing thing. That's going to take a couple weeks of jotting things down and figuring out if you haven't already done that piece. But the first 3 columns here, the care location, your frequency, your notes, try to start filling that out. You can add things here. I just left a few little example things in here to guide you through, but you can add in your own. If I forgot a body part that needs attention, add that in. it's very simple to adjust this template to be what you need for your unique situation. But basically, I have a checkbox. Is this something that needs to be cared for in the home or outside, or sometimes both? Say teeth, for instance. Yes, there's a caregiving routine for teeth at home, but then also your child probably has a dentist. And what is that information? I say to only focus on the first couple columns of this, because actually, and then maybe you could fill in the caregiver professional type. But don't worry yet about writing their name down and phone number and address, because sometimes the mere thought of having to dig up all that information will stop you from doing the whole page. So we all have our pain points. Maybe that's a different pain point for you, but look at your pain point and just put that aside so that you get started. Because once those first couple of columns are filled out, you'll then maybe not be as overwhelmed to go back in and later and fill in the eye doctor's name and contact. Because, and that could be something too, if your spouse is aware of those things, maybe you could get them to fill that out, get some help. But break these big, tough pages down into pieces that you can do. Just checking boxes is fun and a little simpler. So that is that. Make sure I covered what I wanted to cover today. I think I did. So going back into just an overview, trust, and breaking that down into the kinds of trust. And then when you're thinking about different people, knowing where they fall in that line of trust. And of course, we're going to avoid anyone that we ever think would physically harm our child on purpose. So we're just going to stay away from that one. And how we build up to that trust with people is going to be different for each of us, but a lot of times it's just spending time with them and also talking with other people who've maybe worked with them. I love asking people from my daughter's school, whether it be a substitute or an aide or a therapist, to help, because I know they've had their background check and they've been cleared by the school and they've been working with the children at school. And for the most part, I mean, there's always these crazy exceptions. And again, we're all going to feel differently about how we deal with those. But at some point, you have to trust somebody to do something. And you're going to have to work through that. And I hope that it is successful, because our kids need more people in their lives. And they need other people. And there are wonderful people out there as well that we are amazed. My husband was asking around at work at the hospital for help, and one of the nurses said that his aunt helped elderly people as a elderly assistant, and maybe she would help. And she has been fantastic. And she is a little thing, and I didn't know how much she could do with Sarah, but she just is amazing. And they do dance parties and crack up all the time. And she understands Sarah sometimes better than me. So it's really amazing when you put yourself out there and try to find these gems. It took years. Don't give up. And the more that you can write down and simplify and declutter and put it down, then the simpler that transition will be with someone, and the better you'll feel about it. And I hope will move you a little itsy bitsy bit further along on this peace of mind journey that we're all on. And again, this is just a 7-week challenge to get you started and to get hopefully this caregiver template, at least beginning to fill it out so that you can start to feel more comfortable. So I will share a few things, some tutorials online in the group about how to create that shared family notification piece and things like that. And if any of you try it, please comment or send me a message and let me know how it goes. Hopefully I didn't just create a disaster for somebody. But have a great weekend, everybody. And I'll tune in next week. We will tackle our next piece, and hopefully you'll have some luck filling out the care and medical piece. So bye, everybody.